are joined tonight by Jason White, Dan Schisler, Meg Ludlam, Jennifer Hackett. I am Tasha Woods. We are also joined by our student board representatives, Mackenzie Bandy, Amethyst Martinez. With us we have Superintendent Haberer and even more administrators. I'm just going to lump all of you, I apologize, into district administration. We are lucky enough to be joined by them. We'll move on to our consent agenda. And I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Tasha, we decided in the study session to make some changes to the agenda, and there's not an item on the agenda for making changes to the agenda, but we were going to move something out of the consent agenda and change the order of a couple of items.
Meg, I already made those adjustments to the agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
So I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Jennifer has moved and Jason has seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right, with a roll call vote, Meg?
Yeah, aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The consent agenda is accepted. If anyone remembers from our last meeting, right, we moved up the agenda item for the principal updates because someone told me a rumor that principals did not like staying for the full school board meeting. That can't be true, right? No. All right, so you guys, it is in this for me. Valley View, Lincoln, and Mount Stewart. Is it okay if we go in that order? Mr. Moffat, you're okay with going first? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Well, to thank people, this group, of course, there's lots of things that have gone on that we need to thank, but I go right back to our community because of the support, not just with the closure and what we have had to do, but to the support with the tech levy. I mean, that, you know, a couple of years ago when we did that, we were doing it and progressively kind of adding some things, and it ended up becoming an essential part of what we were able to do for kids. So, you know, it turned out that even better than we had hoped. Just putting hundreds of devices into kids' hands and teachers' hands have allowed us to, you know, make the most of a tough situation. So thank you to the Ellensburg community for that original support through the tech levy. I also want to thank our Valley View staff. You know, and everyone would thank their staff, and they will. You know, at Valley View, there's 78 people that work different roles, and we think of staff. You might think I'm talking about teachers. Certainly teachers. Their efforts have been great, but it's everyone, top to bottom. There are people in all different corners of our building that have done things to help families, are anxious to drive out and support families and kids, and the support staff have wanted to get on Zooms and teach lessons and support and just have social time with kids that they've grown to know and work with over time. So truly, to all of our Valley View staff, thank you for the work they've done to try and do their best to help kids want to keep learning and keep engaged with us. So yeah, teachers want and expect and always have delivered a certain product to the kids, and that was hard for people to understand that we can't do that. You know, in this situation, you maybe have taught for 25 years and you know what you have kids leave your room with everything that you have to give them that. And when you can't, it feels like you're not doing your job. And I don't think there's probably anyone in the role that we've had this year that has felt they've done their job they would like to have, because you don't get to feel that and see that in kids. And so I'm grateful for them trying to adjust and adapt and understand that we're going to do well, but we all can't carry that terrible feeling of like you let kids down, because given an opportunity, a choice, none of us would have done that. So thank you again to our teachers and our staff. And the kids and the family. I just say kids and their families doing the best that they can. There's no judgment to be had. People in their life situations, whatever that was, it is their life. And it's for us to keep offering and supporting and asking and encouraging kids and families to take on some of the things that were way out of their comfort zone. I really respect and appreciate whatever families could do to try and help their kids, you know, keep learning with us. So how much participation varies all around, but we are in a great place. And sometimes we probably forget that. But in Ellensburg, we have a very supportive, great community. There's tough parts all around to the things that we tried to offer, and some families couldn't take part in all of it. But at Valley View, we have 560 students, and we had all but 55 take part regularly. And there's a lot of, description that could go with what does take part regularly. But our teachers and our staff had communication with them every week. They took part in Zoom meetings. They took part in Google Classrooms, combination of those things. And so, over 90% of our staff, our students, were doing great up until this week. Up until this week, if you look at the numbers and Kathy Kiefer did a great job of sharing a kind of a attendance form or a record keeping form. We all had different ones, but she had one that really looked great and shared it with us. So we've kept track of things well thanks to her. But this last week, it probably doubled that number of 55 kids not really completely regularly taking part became 100. And out of the 560 students through the course of the 10 weeks, we did have 28 kids that we would say were less than engaged. They were the ones that we had 10 calls to or 10 emails to or home visits to ask what we could do to help. And again, that number has gone up in the last week, and we all anticipated that. It's the spring business, and this is enough. The Zoom meetings aren't fun anymore. So we try to push through and make the most of it here for the next little bit. I know it's a short update, but I just want to say that I think everyone, you probably heard from other administrators earlier, the high school, middle school, but the blessing in the curse is just that our teams are stronger. And we could probably say that about our administrative team. You could say that about a first grade team, kindergarten team, whatever team you want to talk about. And I'm speaking about Valley View. Our teams are stronger. They've collaborated more. They've discovered things that they could do, that they put down some of the walls that maybe they had built up over years for whatever reasons. And I do believe that we're going to be better off in the long run, and that relationships are improving, and that improved relationship between people ends up benefiting kids and their learning. So I'm proud of our school system as a whole, and Valley View in particular.
Thank you, Rob. Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question. I guess I'll probably ask this of all of you. I know there's always a group of people or a group of kids that are harder to reach, and now you're pointing out that the numbers have doubled in the last week. I guess what I'm wondering is, do you have ideas, because this is likely to happen to some regard in the fall and maybe later, since we're probably going a little more online, is there a way, do you have ideas that might help this situation?
Probably you're throwing that out to everyone, I would expect, Dan, but it's the call to families to do it for their kids that I think is the focus that we want to keep, because we've all done little incentive things. You do awards for students and prize and recognition of different sorts, but the true motivation for all of this is the kids are learning, and every parent, regardless of where they are, in our community, wants that. They all want that. They want it at different levels of passion around it, but everyone wants their kids to learn. So I think just continuing to call on this is for them for the long run. It isn't for any other thing. And that's what we've tried to keep focusing on, is it's for the kids. Let's keep working on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rob. Thank you for that update. It's indeed been extraordinary times.
Definitely.
Let's see, who is Lincoln is next. Joanne.
Well, hello, everybody. I would just reiterate a lot of what Rob said, and I'm hoping that I could share my screen. I did put together a little presentation. I'm kind of going to take us back in time, like to a land far, far away, like in the winter, and just highlight and give an update on some of the good work that we've done at Lincoln, but also it really was district-wide, working alongside my elementary admin colleagues and our staffs working together. So I just want to share a little bit of good news. It's really exciting. So if I could.
I'm trying to find your name. I'll make you a co-host so you can do that.
Okay, and I promise I won't take long, but it's we were really excited to get some results back from our ELPA testing that came in. So I just wanted to share that. I also just, while I'm really getting ready to share the screen here, just reiterate what Rob said as far as our staff, our families, our kids, all of you here, just what everybody has done to continue moving forward with learning and really making sure that kids and families do feel connected and supported, I think has been one of our main focuses right now. And I just appreciate, I had a teacher today that had time to reflect in the Jeff Utech training that teachers and admin have been going through, just learning how to use tech and to do this distance learning. And she said, oh my gosh, I can't believe what we've accomplished in such a short time. And it truly has been amazing.
You're good to go.
All right, so I'm gonna share my screen here. And okay. Now, do you guys, you don't see my little speaker notes, do you? You do? You do? Can I take those down?
We do see them, Jen. I think I don't know if you have two screens. I have two screens. If you can pull one to the other screen, or can you minimize it? I don't know.
I probably could. Let's see.
You won't see them if you minimize them in that top right-hand corner, but you'll still have the little arrow in your bottom left-hand corner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but now I just can't get to the little spot here where I wanted to go. Let's see. I'm just going to take it down. Okay, I won't have my notes. So I'll just going to highlight some of the things. So here we are. One of the highlights I would say during this closure has been all of our schools have done drive-by parades, and it was pretty amazing to just be a part of that. And that's what we have here. We do love our bull pups, and this is really in honor of our staff. And what I want to celebrate and share tonight is at the very beginning of the year, we started looking at our data, and all schools, we did a data dive, and we really dug into how are our students doing in all areas. And I really appreciate our board ends that really focus on the whole child, because we know we can't get to academics until that social emotional piece is met. So it's about those connections. It's about addressing those things to see greater academic achievement. And what we like to think about is that we're meeting standards through empathy, collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, curiosity, wonder, inquiry, and equity. So a lot of buzzwords, a lot of big words, but as I go through this presentation and you see some of the pictures and you see what's happening for kids, I want you to keep those things in mind. And there's a saying that we Maslow before we bloom, and I thought it was important to show this because it fits that whole child idea. The Maslow hierarchy of needs is that physiological. Do we have food, shelter, all of those things? Are we safe? Do we feel love and a sense of belonging? Do we have self-esteem? That self-actualization is in place. And then we have to have those things in place before we get to the Bloom's taxonomy, those academic things of, knowledge, understanding, being able to apply our learning, to analyze, evaluate, and that highest level to create. And so thinking of all those things, our celebration tonight is, and our focus was this year, we really looked at the data. We noticed that for our ELL population, we were not seeing the kind of growth that we should. And so this year, we just got our ELPA scores back, and we had 14.3% were proficient, 7.1% are emerging, and 78.6% are progressing. And what that's exciting about is because last year we doubled the amount of students who are proficient. So they moved out of program. So the progressing number went down a little bit, but that's because they've moved out of program now. And then we still have 7% out of our, I think we've got 57 students that are in right now are at that level. So we celebrated that, and really that's a testimony to our staff really coming together, to our EL teacher, Trina Lanigan, and to a lot of hard work that we have done throughout our entire district. And so one example of that is after we did our data dive, we worked with Sue Connolly, we worked with Bridget Dale, and we had PD days, and we found, like, let's have a common focus. What's a high leverage strategy that's good for all kids, K-12, and it was really around something called academic conversations. So what does that look like in the classroom? And it's not quiet. It's not kids sitting in rows at desks being quiet. It's a lot of conversation and talking and using high vocabulary. And like I said, it's all kids. And so teachers came together and they learned and they studied and they were curious about what they could do and what they could change in their practice. And there's something, collective teacher efficacy. It's that shared belief that through their collective action, they can positively influence student outcomes. So we had several days where teachers came together, they met as a team, and then they went into each other's classrooms and they watched each other teach, and they used these new strategies, or strategies that they had maybe used in the past that we weren't using anymore. So it was really exciting. So that's what this picture, the teachers are back here. They've already gone through the whole class. They were meeting with small groups, noticing, observing, and then over here they're sharing what kind of language were we hearing? Were the kids using those high leverage academic words? And it was so exciting. And teachers were saying, like, this is one of the best things we've ever done. Remember the days when we could be together in classrooms? You guys, seeing these pictures makes me so happy. But you could see we have 3 teachers up here, and they were working together, trying out these new strategies using sentence stems and really digging down deep into the questions and having kids really be able to talk with each other using academic language and vocabulary. So that's happening in the classroom, and teachers are starting to do more of that. And then what we're going to see here, these are some of the kids that are with Miss Lanigan in her EL program, and then we're trying to transfer this kind of learning into the classroom, so you can see hands-on building, learning, talking about things, building sentences with high academic vocabulary and language. A lot of collaboration. It is not quiet, as you can see in the background here. This work is, we try to infuse it with science, and there's a lot of cheers and chants. Here's one: intelligent second graders balancing carefully, curious second graders weighing accurately, mathematical second graders graphing correctly, and creative second graders predicting. And when you go into this room and then you see this transfer to the classroom, the language kids start using, and it's amazing. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. It's so great. A lot of this work is about slowing down and like really looking closely. So these kids were in science, really noticing the details in these pictures and then talking about what they saw. And using, like I said, that kind of vocabulary. And these are kindergarten students. Here's an example of some of the writing. that we were doing is flowers make the world very beautiful. Organisms are things that live. And so first graders talking about organisms. There's more kids working together, collaborating. Infusing science, reading, writing, high academic vocabulary. This is the work we did as a system, and this is why we saw that proficiency rate double this year. And so we are just, we're so excited about it. And then this goes to that connection piece when they're the Maslow, when there are those strong connections. This is an example from a 3rd grade class where when we listened to students' choices and their voices, the kids in this class had a new friend joining their class who spoke one language, spoke Spanish, and so they decided they wanted to make her feel welcome. So they wanted to write her a card in Spanish. So they wanted to research and look up on Google how to find the words, and here they did it. I would try to read it, but I'm not very good at that. So, but there it is, and there's their welcome, Valeria, and then they all sign their names. And so we just know school is more than just academics. And this picture, our teacher just shared this with me today because she was putting together her class memory books that she's going to be going out to deliver. And she said this was on the first day of school, and it just took her breath away seeing these kids together. And this is why we're here. This is what we hope. We hope to be able to do again in the fall in some form or fashion, because these kids are our future, and we're just proud of them, and we're proud of all of our staff. Like Rob said, every single person, no matter what your role is, you have the ability to make an impact. So, and I had one final quote. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that, on that note, I will stop sharing my screen. Wasn't that nice to see everybody together? But I do want to thank Ginger and our whole admin team, because we were doing the work with WASLA, and that was a lot of our work, like what could we focus on to really have an impact for all children, both academically and social, emotionally.
That was amazing, seeing children in classrooms together. It seems so long ago. Does anyone on the board have any questions or clarifications? I'll ask others, Meg. I couldn't find Meg's forever.
I would ask Dan's question, since you were going to ask it of everybody, which is, what was Jan?
Do you have any ideas about how to reach those kids that are kind of tailing off right now? Or how to maintain the reach, I guess.
Well, I know we, like Rob had described, we have a attendance log. We have a team that comes together to think about those kids we're not seeing, and then for several of them, we do like little home visits, like just we go by and we drop things off, materials, or sometimes we'll bring some, some treats or something to them just to have that connection. But it's not easy. It's a challenge for sure. But I don't really have the answer to that.
I have to say, Dan, that is a tough question you're asking the admin, because it's also dangerous. Because if anyone here has that answer, if any of these admin have this answer, they're writing the book and selling it to all the schools, and then we'll never see them again.
Well, I won't write a book, but I do think it's important to mix it up, in that we settled into a routine, and the routine was important, but the routine becomes quickly boring. And so if teachers and everyone can just throw in something that is different, it catches the attention. You can't fish with the same lure all the time. You gotta grab their attention with something else, and I think those little changes, as you know, an exclamation mark or two saying try this and have it be something new would be maybe enough to push through this last little bit.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
Joanne, it was nice seeing that PowerPoint for a lot of reasons. And I also appreciate that you brought in those board ends, and that even in the midst of all of this, and it's a lot of this, that there is still a focus on those board ends, right? It took a lot for the community to come together and to create those. And it really is meant to serve all children. And that you shared that data with us, right? And it really showed that by looking at that data, right? We saw you guys, that's amazing growth. That's double growth. That's incredible. And your slideshow with just kids together and that student voice and that student choice and seeing the power of that in that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That leaves Mount Stewart.
Okay. Let me just give Matt a warning that Mrs. Kiefer is going to need to be a co-host. So while I do my initial words, which won't take too long.
She's already set up.
Oh, she set up. Okay, good. Well, we started off with the COVID catastrophe, as we all know, and I'm going to use that with some alliteration about where we've been at Mount Stewart as a staff and with our student and parent community. So COVID catastrophe developed into cohesion, communication, courage, and connections. And I'm just amazed, as others have said, at how close the staff has become to solve problems. And I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Kiefer because she is amazing at data, and data is what we wanted to see. So Mrs. Kiefer, take it away.
All right, thanks, Dan. And Joanne, I just have to say thank you. You always inspire me. That was really fun to watch and makes me feel good. So at Mount Stewart, like Mr. Patton had just alluded to, our focus through the district really was through this closure and this time of crisis and uncertainty. How do we maintain student and family connections and really leverage those relationships that we have with our families to support them and their students through learning through this closure. And so we too took our guidance from OSPI and our ESD priorities through our board ends, really focusing on that connections component and making sure that we were staying connected and supporting students and families in every way that we could. And so how did we connect? As Rob and Joanne and everyone has already mentioned, as a district, we really did come together and find ways to make sure that we were reaching out to families and staying in contact just from day one. It included a lot of things like our district survey, our teachers calling every single family. We put out over 320 Chromebooks at Mount Stewart to get our kids and families connected. The Jeff Utech training allowed us to develop learning opportunities for students that would keep them engaged in a distance model. And then that weekly attendance and tracking, or what we call at Mount Stewart, our two-way contact log. And that was actually developed by one of the administrators at the high school. I think it was one of the VPs, and I'm not sure which one. And we tweaked it to fit elementary because it had a lot of really good components in there. And we knew that we wanted and needed to track contact and engagement with our teachers and all of our students and families. And so we did that by keeping weekly track of communication based on various different venues that teachers were using with families, through Classroom Zoom and connections for students, not just providing lessons, but just time to connect with their teacher. And so if a teacher had two-way contact with the family during the week, student had participated in Zooms, completed assignments, picked up packets. The parent may have called in and said, yep, we're doing fine. We're working on last week's stuff. We counted that as being in attendance and two-way contact, and therefore they were engaged at some level. And here you can see that overall, from the very beginning, we've averaged about 87.77% regular contact with our families and students, and that's the breakdown by grade level. And so how do we respond if they're not engaging? Dan and I kind of put a system together, and so what we typically do is on Friday morning, we take a look at those attendance logs, and any student who does not have a check mark next to their name for 2 weeks in a row, we make phone calls to those families to just check in. How are you doing? Hey, we noticed, Emily hasn't, made contact in the last couple of weeks. Is there anything that we can do to support you guys? And just touch bases. Most of the time, families are answering their phones, even though they're blocked numbers, because most of the time we're using cell phones and *69 or through the phone service. And so they're not avoiding phone calls at all. They're usually very happy and thankful that we called and appreciate it. And 88% of the families that we reach return, and their child is making contact and participating in that next school week. And so we very rarely had families that after the phone call did not return and start engaging again, at least for some time. And then once we were looking at that data, we thought it would be interesting to take a look at our special populations. And so we looked at students with IEPs, and of the 76 families who Dan and I had made phone calls to at one point throughout this closure, 9 of those students had IEPs. Of those 76 families, 6 of them were English learners, and 26 of them would be students and families that we would consider at risk, typically because of social, emotional, or family situations or hardships that we knew about or that families had shared with us. And then about 22 of those 76 families got 2 or more phone calls throughout this time. So they might have been gone for a couple of weeks. We made the phone call. They came back for a couple of weeks, but then fell off again. And so we did have some families that have been up and down. And so next steps, whoops, let me go back one. So next steps for us, it's really kind of part of that brainstorming process that we're just beginning, as we're waiting to see what models we have to choose from and how we come to determine which model we may be choosing or fluctuating in and out of different models for next year. We really do have to focus on how can we get better at supporting those families that have a tendency to kind of fall off the radar on and off, and how do we continue to keep them engaged. I agree with Rob and what he said, that we have to kind of change it up a little and make sure that we are like he said, luring them back in on occasion and providing some novelty that gets them back interested and engaged. But I think too, just that commitment to not give up on them and continue to call and reach out and go visit as needed will continue to be a strategy that we use. But these focus groups that we are beginning to form and the conversations that we are about to have, where we're involving all the stakeholders, I think are going to help us answer that question of what do we do when we have students who are dropping off in their level of engagement? And of course, how do we then also take those connections that we've built and we've relied so strongly upon and transfer that to continued learning at high levels, no matter what model we're in. So that's our update.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I know Dan has a question. He promised.
Yeah, actually, maybe a couple of questions. One of them is the same one as, do you have more ideas? You talked about changing up to reach the kids that are tailing off. The other question I had, and I've had comments from various people about Chromebook problems, and are they, there's some programs that aren't running on them very well. Are you guys in elementary schools having problems with the Chromebooks and the software and all that, or are they doing okay there?
I think for us, we're doing okay, and I don't know what Joanne and Rob would say, but for the most part, I think the student Chromebooks are working fine and they're able to access what they need. We haven't heard much of that. The bigger challenge has been teachers who have been using Chromebooks for their distance learning, because that's been their primary source. There have been some challenges there that I know that we are working on solutions to as we move forward.
Let me add that initially there were a lot of problems, but there are a lot of people came together to solve those problems. I would like to point out Joe Chang, one of our second grade teachers in particular, who has a degree in IT, and he took it upon himself to take every phone call that we had from a parent, call him up and walk him through it.
Well,
Many people did those sorts of things. That was the cohesion, and one of the examples of the cohesion I was referring to.
And I would add to that Mike Welch in the IT department in transitioning and allowing direct support to families through that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Filtering through the schools was very helpful.
mm-hmm. I had another question. One thing that was mentioned earlier is that our kids partly did okay this year because they were together for most of the year, and then this distance stuff only started 2 months ago. If we can't do face-to-face stuff in the spring, in the fall, I mean, I guess I think especially as part of the elementary experience, you need to get to know, you need to make the connections first. And I don't know, it seems important that we actually be at the school. Kids are all together at the school. I don't know, like none of us know at this point how that's going to happen. Are there, I guess I'm not sure quite how to ask this, but that seems like a really important part of elementary school. I don't know, maybe I'll just leave it there and see what your comments are about that.
Yeah,
And not to mention at 6 and 9, which is another transition, because a lot of the other students are going to be continuing, but these are the ones who will be new.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree that we definitely used the relationships that we had already formed because we'd been in school all year to our advantage. We've been brainstorming a little bit at the building level on, okay, how do we, introduce ourselves to our students and build those relationships, if we start in a distance model. And one of the ideas we had was having a virtual meet your teacher, moving up to the next grade, whether it be a video compilation of fun introductions or a combination of that with some Zoom class meetings, like meet your teacher for next year, Zoom meetings. And then I think that's one of the reasons that we felt strongly that we really wanted our K-5 students to be able to keep their Chromebooks active through the summer too, as we felt too that it was going to be important to be able to communicate and support families, probably starting in August, as much as people might be ready for that, to kind of get them on board and them excited about the school year as well. And so those are just a few things that have been rattling around in our heads as we problem solve.
Okay.
Dan, we had conversations as well and even surveyed our staff in regard to a cohort move up by grade, just with the thought that if we knew that we were going to be distance learning in the fall and that would go on for an extended length of time, that it may be good to have those kids in a cohort of people that they're comfortable with, students. even though they would have a new teacher, that might be a comfort that would benefit them, socially, emotionally, and just so many unknowns, and the timeline, it didn't work out well for that, in that we have to do placements, and we weren't sure if it was going to be distance or hybrid or back in person type of learning. So yeah, we recognize the need to continue with that restorative practice and community building, regardless of the form that we're in. It just is easier if you're able to be together, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board? Right, well, thank you, Mr. Patton and Ms. Kiefer. Thank you for sharing your slides. Thank you for all of the work that you and your staff have done. And really thank you to all the elementary school personnel. When Dan said it was 2 months, I'm like, really, has it been 2 months? I feel like it's been a lot longer than 2 months. Thank you. Thank you for coming and sharing. Board, I am recognizing that we do have other people here that are here to present to us. I'm wondering if we can move agenda item E up to agenda item B. Are we able to do that, Matt, without a vote?
Yes, you can actually do that because it is on the agenda. You're just adjusting the order.
I see Michelle Cawley sitting here so patiently, but I wonder if we can just go ahead and move her up to agenda item B. Is that okay with you? Michelle, is that okay?
Well, yes, but I'm going to stay on anyway because this is really fun. This is so interesting. And it really does back into what I'm going to share with you tonight. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Michelle Culley, and I'm a registered nurse, a member of the Kittitas County Health Network. I'm employed at Community Health of Central Washington, and I'm the community health nurse and program manager for maternity support services and children and youth with special health care needs. In these roles, I spend a lot of my time in the schools, as you know, and for 5 years, I also worked for the district as the school nurse at Morgan. I'm president of the Kittitas County Early Learning Coalition and also on the Education Foundation Board. But as a member of the Health Network, I was asked to come and talk to you about the 0.1% sales tax. And I appreciate you giving me a little time just to talk about this new and expanded tax for chemical dependency and mental and behavioral health services. And a number of you have talked about the social emotional piece tonight. And this really fits in. And I do want to say that we used what was happening in the Ellensburg School District as a model for some of this program. So my credentials are only important because they really speak to the breadth of my experience in working with children and families with unmet behavioral and mental health needs. I understand the impact of these needs on a child's success in school. For over 10 years, I've worked with members of our community to enact this sales tax in order to more effectively address the needs of community members. This sales tax will be paid for by anyone purchasing items in Kittitas County. And now, as many of you know, people from the West Side like to come over here, especially since we're in phase 2. But they do come over here and they make large purchases. They buy cars here and things like that because our tax is actually less. So it's important to remember a sales tax would be paid for people out of the county who would actually not be receiving any services. We also know that when local judges have gone to the legislature and they have talked about the needs in our county for more funding, the first question that Judge Parks tells us they ask is, have you enacted the 0.1% sales tax? Because we gave that to you, you need to use that and then come back and talk to us about more funding. So what is 0.1%? So for you math teachers, this is probably really easy, but I was like, what does that really mean? So $100 purchase, going to cost me 10 cents. I said, well, okay. What about a bigger purchase? So I had somebody come and paint the outside of my house. That was about $12,000. That would have costed me $12. If I go buy a new car for $40,000, I'm going to spend an additional $40. So it's not a huge amount of money for our purchasers. The Health Network is a collaboration of almost every agency in the county, and Ginger has taken a huge role in representing the district at that meeting and really speaking for all school districts and all children in our county. And her participation has really been valued. And there was a long time when it was like, where are the schools? So she has done what you wanted her to do. She's out there. The hospital, sheriff's department, corrections department, police, mental health providers, Hope Source, community health, anyone that we felt should be at the table, we brought them to the table. And we started this collaboration effort really as a result of a crisis with a child in the Ellensburg School District. So together we assessed the needs of the community and we presented our plan to the commissioners in February, noting that in our county, mental illness is the 10th leading cause of hospitalization. In this county, there is one healthcare provider for 710 residents. In Washington State, there's one for 360. So we are not doing well with this. It is extremely hard for me to get an adult or a child an appointment with a mental health provider. Our need for increased services was acute, and then COVID-19 arrived. The state is now forecasting an increasing need for mental health and behavioral health services for people of all ages. This summer, we expect to see an increase in aggression, law breaking, increased substance abuse, increased voluntary isolation, blunted emotional expression. This fall, we expect to see an increase in depression and suicide. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we're not going to solve this without a lot of community support. So the county commissioners have before them a plan to use the sales tax that would give adults and youth in our community what I like to call a chance to advance by expanding access to chemical dependency and mental health services. Funds will expand delivery of on-site mental health screening, assessment, and treatment services to jail inmates. And that's important because our kids, many times their parents could be an inmate. And often what typically has happened, although we've seen improvement in the last year, people are released from the jail with no connection to services. So immediately it's a revolving door. So we know we can change that by starting services ahead of time. And the jail people have done a fabulous job in figuring out what is an evidence-based program and how they can turn that around. The other thing is to establish transitional care coordination services for people discharged from the emergency room. So I enjoyed hearing you talk, because in healthcare, we would call that care coordination, where you're doing all these outreach to families and you're figuring out some way to re-engage them back into the system. That's what we're talking about. And then expand availability and accessibility of emergency chemical dependency and mental health crisis services. So you've probably seen this with your students, where your student gets in with a mental health provider. Great, we celebrate that. They have an appointment on Wednesday and that appointment is canceled. And the reason it's canceled is because that mental health provider was on call last night in the emergency room. They spent the entire night there dealing with emergency mental health crises. Understandably, they need to go home and go to sleep. Your student doesn't get services on Wednesday, maybe doesn't get his services the next Wednesday. Pretty soon that kid is in a mental health crisis, and so is every other kid in your classroom, because, you know, we know it disrupts, right? So we've got to change that, and we have a mechanism to bring in some other staffing into the emergency room that would help us to eliminate these canceled appointments. That'll make a huge, huge difference. We want to expand mental health services to all schools. Ellensburg has really done well with this, and you've been the model for how successful that has been, but we want that to be countywide, and we want to be able to give you some additional funding that would make that feasible for you. The 2018 survey of 10th graders in our county indicated there was an urgent need for early intervention, and that was pre-COVID. So, Chance to Advance funding will screen youth for anxiety, depression, and suicide, and I've used what has happened through the grant that we had at the Ellensburg School District as a model for how we can implement that elsewhere. So the next step is the county commissioners are supportive. They do understand the need. The next step is when the county enters phase 3, the county commissioners will hold an in-person community meeting. And at that meeting, they want the community to come and they want to listen and they want you to learn, and then that will advise them on the decision they have to make. They're seeking public input, and they've asked all of the members of the health network to continue to do this outreach. So again, I appreciate you letting me come tonight. And then it is up to the county commissioners to decide whether they will implement that tax. That is their responsibility as a commissioner. The Ellensburg School District has really been a leader in expanding services by applying for and receiving grants to address our students' mental health needs, and this tax would strengthen our approach. In closing, I'd just like to say it is not acceptable for a child to wait 4 months to see a mental health provider, and I see that commonly. It's not acceptable for children to have multiple appointments canceled because the counselors were at the emergency room all night. It's not acceptable, although this happens all the time, that children are denied mental health services because there are no services in our county and they are denied services in other counties. It's not, you can't just say, well, go to Wenatchee or go to Yakima. They cannot receive services there. And it is not acceptable to see an elementary school child spend 3 days sitting in an emergency room trying to get services. This tax will go a long way to fixing the problem. So I look forward to collaborating with you to make this happen. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions from the board?
No, but I'd just like to say how very important I think this issue is. I mean, we truly do not, until you need mental health services, you may not realize how hard they are to get. But, it's critically important at all times. And with the additional stress of COVID, it's that much more important.
And we do want to free up the teachers and the staff to take care of the other students. And that's a large part of what good mental health care enables you to do.
Michelle, I want to thank you for taking the time to come and present this to us. I believe you came last year too, at the beginning of the campaign for the 1/10 of 1%.
Probably.
Yeah, no,
one of my favorite places.
I believe the board did sign a letter of support to be submitted to county commissioners. I think it was about a year ago. Excuse me, my days, I've gotten confused. I want to thank you for your continued advocacy for that and bringing that information to us. I also would like to acknowledge and thank our superintendent for sitting in and being a part of those vital discussions and making sure that our schools are represented and have a seat at that table. And I would like clarification from you. So an action step that we and other citizens can take is submit public comment to the county commissioners. Yes. And also attend a meeting that will be announced at a later date when we are in phase 3.
That's correct, Tasha.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that those are the 2 steps that we can take.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So, Jennifer Kuntz, I do see you too. I know I'm mixing up the agenda a lot tonight, but I'm trying to make sure that we're moving people up here that are people oriented. And Jen, tell me if I'm wrong. You are item C and F on the agenda, and so board Ginger, Matt, can we move item C and F to be together and to be next? Board, okay. I see thumbs up. Jen, hope that was okay with you. So we'll just move both of yours up.
Perfect, thank you. Well, there are actually teachers here that are going to present the 2 different curricula that we are looking to adopt. One is for high school sociology and one is for middle school ELA curriculum. And I am really excited about both these programs. When they went in front of the Instructional Materials Committee, it was thumbs up across the board. Everyone was excited to see them implemented. So I'm gonna let them talk about the programs. And Eric, do you wanna start?
Well, I would love to go first, but last time I went in front of the English people, so I would be happy to yield to let them go first if they so choose. Otherwise, I'll dive in.
Brittany's shaking her head, so I think she's passing you the baton.
Ah, excellent. Thank you. Matt, could you please enable my screen share? I think Matt's in control of that. And I just want to start off and say thanks. This is my first opportunity to speak to the board. This is my second year of teaching in Ellensburg, but this is where I came from as a kid. And I'm in about my 21st year of teaching mostly high school social studies. And so it's wonderful to be here. I've been told I've got about a 5-minute time frame. So what I want to do is give you the very brief synopsis as far as just rolling through to provide time for questions. And then anything you want me to go deeper on, I'd be happy to dive into. So I'm going to try to screen share. You have to, for the road noise, I'm outside. We're all splitting Wi-Fi in our house, and this was the quietest space for me to have good access to bandwidth. Can you guys see my screen okay? Yes?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So the text is Social Problems by John Mishonis. And very briefly, this is the cover of the book. This is its 8th edition. And I just put together some quick notes so that I can fly through this. So first off, a little bit about the class. So this course is College and the High School Sociology 101, more accurately named Social Problems. And it is a dual credit course through Central Washington University. And also kids will receive their high school credit for Current World Affairs, which is a senior required course. Kids earn 5 college credits through Central and 1 full credit for Current World Affairs at EHS. And I'm a big proponent, after teaching AP for several years, I'm a big proponent of Cornerstone or College in the High School. I just think it's healthier for kids. It's a wonderful pathway for getting kids a little bit of a jump start into college. The credits are super cheap and, in fact, subsidized by grants, the first 10 anyway. It's easier and I think healthier than AP. Some of the AP courses have such extreme rigor that they've driven kids away. And so we're losing kids in the AP classes, and we're losing kids to Central's Running Start program. And these Cornerstone offerings are a great way for us to keep FTE here at Ellensburg. And this is just one of about 30 credits I have to offer. So this is my first 5 that I'm working in here. Anyway, the text is called Social Problems, and it's the 8th edition of this book. The author is one of the most respected sociologists in the country. He's taught for over 40 years in several different American universities. Obviously, he's a PhD in sociology. I taught out of his more general Intro to Sociology text, the Sociology, which is in its 17th edition. And the book that I've selected here is aptly named Social Problems for the course of the same name, and that's in its 8th edition. And basically, Mishonis is widely accepted to sort of be the industry standard for sociology texts. So I'm just going to go down here. Why this author? Why this book? Well, I've already talked about the author. So why this book? I was given a rubric to fill out to evaluate the text, and it focused on engagement, best practices, access and equity, and usability. And hopefully, I'm sure Jen has provided that for you. So I'm not going to go through and deliver a lecture on that. But I will say that the text meets or exceeds all 4 of these standards very well. It was approved unanimously by the Textbook Adoption Committee in my half-hour or so presentation on the book. I've personally taught out of Mishonis's sociology book for a same class up in Cle-Elum-Roslyn when I taught there, and judged him to be a good author and his books to be sound. This is a 2020 edition. It's super current, which is critical when you're looking at current world affairs or social problems or current world issues that are facing us today. Obviously, we want the most recent data that we can get, and so this deals with relevant topics using the most up-to-date data. Additionally, and this is important with a lot of cornerstone classes, is the college sort of directs which books you'll use. Fortunately, the sociology department's not very heavy-handed, but I do like to be aligned with the different professors at Central or Eastern or wherever I'm teaching these cornerstone classes. And this social problems text is used by at least one or two of the sociology professors. Additionally, this text provides a very strong attempt at neutrality in dealing with some of the most critical issues of our day. And all of you who are still on screen know that we live in such a highly contentious and divided society. So the wonderful part about this is he uses as an objective approach as possible, uses really good data through solid methodology, and it's a real information-driven approach to examining the issues that we all face today in American society. I really like that there's a difference between what you think about something and that thing that you're thinking about. And so he kind of divides his chapters up and deciphers between information, like some of the topics that we were talking about today, like anxiety or depression or mental health. All of these are great sociological issues. So there's factual data on these, and then there's viewpoints about what people think about them. And then in addition, the text at the end of every chapter examines 4 different political viewpoints, sort of a more moderate left, moderate right, and a more extreme left and right viewpoint. So after teaching current world affairs for 15 years, I really think this is a defensible approach to tackle the topic on. Finally, and good for you as a board, this text is cheap. They wanted almost $200 for these textbooks, and I, knowing that we had budget challenges facing us, managed to find a way to finagle these for $84.99 a copy. And these are hard copy textbooks that we'll be able to have for several years, 5 years or more, up until the next social studies adoption. Whereas the online versions, which are very neat and attractive, are almost this much every year. So at this point, I'll take any questions that any of you may have, and I'm going to stop my screen share so I can come back and join you all in the real world, or let me say the real virtual world. So does anyone have any questions?
I'm not entirely clear on whether we're approving the book or the course. Do we already have the course? Have we been teaching it in the past?
So my understanding is that the high school course is current world affairs. It's an existing course that doesn't need permission to run because it's a course that we offer all the time. I just wanted to give you some perspective on the cornerstone. So sociology is a new Central Washington University course that we will be offering. And so my understanding is that we're here to approve the textbook. I just gave you some perspective and background so people could understand the whole picture.
Yes, and that's under Policy 2020, Meg.
Appropriately numbered.
That's true. Does any other board member have any questions? I have a question, and I think it's more for Jennifer or Ginger. This is a instructional materials adoption, so I am wondering who does sit on the textbook adoption committee?
So according to Policy 2020, or to the Procedure 2020, it needs to be made up of district administrators, building administrators, teachers, and parents. Parents making up by law fewer than 50% of the committee. So we had all of those stakeholders present at the meeting.
And do we have, do we know who those representatives were? Like, did we get that information, like who were the parents, when did they meet, who was our district administrators, what was the other textbooks that we were looking at for adoption?
I can get you that information.
Yeah, you can also say not now.
Yeah, I mean, I can run through the list of the people who were there right now if you.
I'm just wondering if we have a standing textbook adoption committee that did this work.
We do. The parent piece of it is not standing because we like to get parents who have children at that grade level. So we targeted high school and middle school parents for this particular committee. But we do have all of the librarians across the district are on the committee ongoing. Michelle represents our building administrators ongoing, and then Kelly Kronbauer and myself and Patty were there for district administration.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? This is, I'm sorry, I'm toggling between windows here. This is up for adoption. This is an action item.
I move that we adopt this book as the for this class.
I second.
Dan has moved and Jennifer has seconded. Is there any further discussion? Then with a roll call vote, Meg?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
I also vote aye. So this textbook is adopted.
Tasha?
Thanks,
Yeah.
board. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, English people, for your patience. It's been a pleasure.
I especially like English people. I especially. Jason, yes.
Sorry, I wasn't quick enough with the discussion, but the quick clarification is more about the curriculum as far as where this falls. So is this sociology course then counting as a public affairs credit in the curriculum? Is that, Jennifer? Do you understand my question? Sorry. So in other words, there was a lot of reference to higher education and Social 101, which I'm very familiar with. So I'm just wondering, so in other words, and I know there was a lot mentioned about Running Start as well. So I'm trying to connect the dots, understand is if the high school, this isn't just an elective, right? This is actually a course that completes what high school requirement?
I could clarify that unless Jen wants to go.
Go ahead, Eric.
So we're required 3 years of social studies. And basically we do a world history at the freshman or sophomore level, U.S. history for a year at the junior level. Mm-hmm. And the senior year, we have traditionally taught current world affairs or current world problems. About 4 or 5 years ago, state law or RCW or WAC was passed that required the teaching of civics. And so what we do is we teach civics in the fall, which is obviously a government-based course. And then in the spring, we teach current world affairs, which the reason why I got into teaching the sociology class through Central is Central's course description for social problems is almost identical to the state and the Cle-Elum and the Ellensburg course description for current world affairs. So this is it's kind of a gray answer to your question when it comes to, is it a required course? So current world affairs is a required course. Kids will get credit for current world affairs, but kids are not required to take sociology 101. Right. That is
perfect. You answered my question. Yep, which is great. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to see this added as an option for students. Thanks.
You bet. We can maybe work anthropology in the next couple of years with all of your support.
Go for it.
Okay. Have a great night.
Thank you. That takes us to item F, the 6th through 8th grade English language arts curriculum.
And I'm going to introduce Brittany to present on that. And I have your video, Brittany, if you want me to show it. But
awesome, that'd be great. Thank you.
You want me to start with that?
Yes, please. So I just made a video ahead of time to show how the online software for the StudySync curriculum looks, but I wasn't sure if I'd be able to share my screen, so I went ahead and sent it to Jen ahead of time.
All right. Can everyone see it?
All right, so one of the really neat things that we liked about the StudySync program is that from the teacher dashboard, both of these classes, first of all, are synced to Google Classroom, and that ability to sync with a program that we already use is really nice. But if you go to Options and Manage Class Roster, it'll pull up the list of students in class that have been synced with the Google Classroom roster. And on StudySync, it allows us teachers to emulate the student, so we can see the program, the assignments, and the dashboard from the student's perspective, which is really nice for giving students help with the software. Another thing that we really liked about the StudySync program is how well organized their units are, and how adaptable the units are. They can very easily be personalized to fit the needs of teachers and students. And I believe that an entire unit curriculum is usually slotted to take about, I think, 30 days. Some a little bit more, and with each unit there are additional options. So at the with each unit we've got grade levels 6 through 12, and then there are at least 6 30-day units already packaged, ready to go for each of those grade levels. Each unit is themed around an essential question, which is great. There's a program guide, a grade overview, and a scope and sequence for the entire year of learning for every single grade, 6 through 12. And in addition to the resources for each self-contained unit, there are resources for students and teachers with glossaries of text-based vocabulary and vocabulary that's used in the StudySync software and website. There's research-based alignments for teachers and other stakeholders, exactly how each section of the learning process is related to Common Core alignments or any kind of research related to the hows and whys behind each lesson. So there's a ton of additional resources here. There's a whole library with tons of text, not just limited to the novels, short stories, essays, informational texts, and poems, as in addition to videos and speeches and things that go with each unit. But you can see here that there are over 1,800 texts in the online library. You can filter the text, you can assign them to classes if you want to. Another thing that we really liked about StudySync's curriculum program is that each self-contained unit has so much to it. And so each unit has a pacing guide as well. So it has a suggested pacing guide for how long each lesson skill should take in class, which of course can be modified to fit teacher and students' instructional needs. Another thing that we like about StudySync is its variety of rubrics. So if I'm looking at the rubrics here, there are rubrics for constructed responses, rubrics that are geared toward standardized testing like the ACT. There are rubrics for argumentative, informative, for every kind of writing prompt that is examined through the Common Core. And these rubrics can also be modified by teachers as needed. So, and also each rubric will have it's scored 0 to 4. And it gives examples of what's expected for each rubric using language from the Common Core that's common to all teachers. Finally, one of the things that we really enjoyed about StudySync was just the enormous amount of texts available from a variety of authors, from a variety of different backgrounds, ethnicities, and cultures. And so that's just really wonderful. So sorry for the length on that. But I just kind of thought it would be cool to show the board kind of what the software website online component of the curriculum looks like. One of the main reasons that we at the middle school really liked StudySync in comparison to the other curriculum that we piloted was that there is a companion app that allows students to download and complete assignments offline. What else was I going to say? I'm really nervous right now. We also like the text in it.
Brittany, this is Teresa. We liked that it was easier for kids to use.
Yes.
They were able to find things much easier than the Pearson Realize, which is the other one that we piloted. And so the ease of, Brittany said that her students liked it better than even Google Classroom, which is pretty easy to use. So does that help, Brittany?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
But it was also really nice that there were some texts in StudySync that we already have access to at the middle school, like Children of the Dust Bowl. And that's one of the texts that we already teach at the 7th grade level. So what StudySync does is kind of give us new ways to focus on texts that we're already familiar with and that we already enjoy teaching. In addition to, of course, introducing newer and better texts from a greater variety of authors, from a bigger variety of backgrounds. So that's basically the gist of the curriculum. Are there questions?
Thank you, Brittany. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Notice it said some ELA. Is this particularly for English language learners, or is it?
Oh, Dan, I think what you're
everyone
asking.
else?
It's for English language arts.
Arts. Oh, okay.
This is specifically for 6th through 8th grade English language arts.
Okay.
It does have bilingual materials, though.
It does have a lot of built-in supports and scaffolding for students who are also English language learners, but it's not specifically for an English as a second language class.
Yeah, I was going to mention the supports in it, but I was also going to mention that one of the important things to the ELA team at the middle school was that whatever we adopted integrated all of the standards into one program so that they didn't have to piecemeal writing and reading and language standards. And I think that this does that really nicely.
Does anyone else have any other questions? I'm wondering if this tool is, with this adoption, with this approval, would this include the tool Sync Blast with it, or is that an additional?
I'm not sure what Sync Blast is, but there are tools in StudySync's website called Blasts.
Yeah. It's a part of the program. Sync Blast is part of the program that just is more inquiry based. So I was just wondering if our school is considering adopting that as part of the StudySync adoption, or are we just going to go with just StudySync and not the Sync Blast? And Jen Coons can get me that information later. It is not, don't struggle to answer that question.
Well, I think also, Tasha, we had a very limited time to pilot. We weren't going to pilot this year, and then we suddenly decided to pilot, and then COVID happened. So we split, and so like I piloted Pearson, and then Brittany piloted StudySync, and then we compared the two. But she hasn't really been able to dig as deep as we would have liked to have. So that's probably why it's hard to answer that question.
That's helpful. Thank you. I didn't see anywhere on here the price of this adoption for 6th through 8th.
It depends on how many years we purchase the licenses for.
And do we have a recommendation to us as to what that is yet?
So obviously the more years you purchase, the cheaper, the less you spend in the long run. And we are currently on a 7-year adoption cycle, which we just got put back on a cycle. We have previously not been on an adoption cycle. But we're looking at probably a 3 or 4 year license purchase and then finding the funds in 3 or 4 years, which we should have at that time to extend it into the 7th year.
Okay.
But a 3-year license with the purchase of novels for all 6th through 8th grade students is going to be about $75,000.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we adopt this curriculum.
I'll second.
Jason has moved and Jennifer has seconded. Any further discussion? All right, with a roll call vote, Meg? Sorry, Meg.
Calling me first.
I know.
Yes, I.
Sorry, you're right next to me. I'm so sorry. And Jason's like prepared, like he's off on mute, so I should always go first with Jason. Jason?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The curriculum is adopted. All right, you guys, thank you for coming and presenting.
Thank you.
Oh, and also Brittany, I want to give a shout out too, because you demonstrated Screencastify. So thank you for showing the board what Screencastify is when you guys are talking about Google Classroom and screencasting. That was really informative. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. I use it every day.
Okay, since I've messed with this agenda so terribly, we are on resolution 12-620. And if I am wrong, someone will correct me. I think we're good. All right. Certificated contracts for 2021. I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve for resolution 620.
I'll second it.
Jennifer has moved and Jason has seconded. Is there any further discussion?
We just have a brief description of what it is so everybody will know what we're talking about.
These are the contracts for our certificated staff for the year 2021.
And I have spent a great deal of time ridiculous amount of time trying to analyze and understand what the changes are from last year, and it looks reasonable.
Any other discussion? All right, then with a roll call vote, Jason?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Resolution 12-620 is adopted. So we're on to item G, the student cell phone procedure update. And I think Mackenzie, you're going to present on this.
Yeah, I am. All right, we have a policy proposal that we could share with everybody here if we want to. I think Matt has it.
And I think he linked to it too. So it is in the agenda packet link that is in the chat box. But Matt, if you have the ability to bring that up easily and share that screen, I think Mackenzie would like that.
Yeah, it's good either way.
Go ahead and start talking and give me a moment and
Okay.
I'll bring it up.
All right, so the Student Senate, we met with Mr. Snow a week ago and we ran over our policy proposal and we got really good feedback from him, and the proposal that we'll all see now is still, it's pretty official looking. It's still in draft form. There's definitely some things we need to add, some things we need to get rid of, certain gray areas, but in a gist of it, emphasizes the education that we want other students to have on the importance of why cell phones shouldn't be a dominant aspect in class, whether it's allowed or definitely not allowed. And that also involves educating them on addiction and their social and emotional well-being in using these cell phones. And the second aspect of our proposal is policy. So we have multiple kind of new, some of them are already enforced in some classrooms, but the uniqueness of this policy proposal is that it's meant to be used like classroom-wide, school-wide. It's no longer super up to every single teacher to create their own independent cell phone policy proposal in class. And I think that this would allow for the policy to be remembered by students and to be taken more seriously by students rather than something becoming inconsistent or students to listen to a policy in one class and use cell phones in the next. And then the next aspect of our proposal are the offense levels and the enforcement. So school-wide, we'll prefer for there to be offenses that are on students' minds if they do end up using cell phones, and to know that they're going to be held accountable and their cell phones are going to be held accountable, whether that's in an office, if it's caught, let me see here. Yeah, it'll be sent to administration if they're caught for a second time, and the same will happen the third time, but only released to a parent at the end of the day. And then the last part of our proposal is how this policy will be communicated to students and parents. And it is regarded here that students without a cell phone can notify the school, and parents can sign something on our contract that we've also created. So at the beginning of the year, there will ideally be a contract that will be sent out to students and parents for them to understand what the new cell phone policy is school-wide and send that back to the school. Yeah, I think just the students and I in the Senate think that a school-wide proposal will hopefully bring down cell phone use. I can personally attest that using my cell phone, whether it's at home or if it's at school, when I'm on it for just 5 to 10 minutes, it just takes me away from the environment I'm in. And then I look up from my phone and I'm done, and I feel like I'm just transported back to reality. And I can only imagine that that's a similar experience for so many other students who may be using their phone in class or at times that they're not supposed to during school. And yeah, me and Amethyst are actually planning a day to film a legacy video because we're both graduating and we want this to continue being developed or implemented next year. So we're going to address our concerns in a video that will be shown to staff at some point next year, this summer. And oh yeah, we'll be meeting with administration tomorrow at 11 a.m. just to go over our policy again and to get even more feedback on it. So that is my update on that.
And Mackenzie, this was the work of the Student Senate. This was the first year of the Student Senate. That's impressive work. Did you guys choose this topic on your own? Like, did you choose this?
No. It was a problem that Ginger brought up, and it was wholeheartely agreed by most people that we should address that. And I was excited to tackle it too, because I see it a lot. I do it a lot too, so yeah.
I like it. Mackenzie self-identifies as the abuser of cell phone.
Yeah.
Thank you for that update. Does anyone have any questions from the board?
I do. So I really like this policy, Mackenzie, particularly like the fact that it's going to be consistent across all the classes, and that I think that the punishments are appropriate. So instead of suspending a kid or having academic, it's simply losing your phone. And then I like the fact that the parent has to pick it up. My one concern that I raised in the study session is I'm very I mean, I get why you want to do the cell phone pouch attendance, but I'm a little concerned about that for two reasons. First of all, kids who don't have cell phones, how are they being included in attendance? Do we have it? But also if a kid loses his cell phone, or if a kid doesn't carry their cell phone, I mean, we're almost requiring kids to consistently have their cell phones for attendance. And so what we absolutely need to make sure that a kid who is physically sitting in class and does not have a cell phone in their possession is not marked as absent. And so I think that's not the intent of the policy, but I would just tweak it to make sure that there's a very clear procedure for what a student can do if they don't have a cell phone on them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll definitely bring that up in our meeting tomorrow when we all meet again.
And I like the idea of some teachers who want kids to use cell phone as a resource, go look up something, that is available in the policy so that they can do their own research at their desk if they need to.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that too. We also want to promote Chromebook use. And I think that might be added later on, even though they are bulkier and slower, the less kids have to go to cell phones to look something up, the less likely they'll be to hop onto another app or get distracted. But if it's allowed by a teacher, yeah.
Any other questions? Meg, I'm not sure if you're talking to us, but you're not, you're on mute.
Yeah, as usual.
Okay.
Okay, so this is not a question, but a comment. I really like the way this policy, as it looks as it stands, and furthermore, it's entirely consistent with the board's or WASDA's or whoever's own policy on cell phone use by students. So that'll make life easy for us, with one exception in that policy, which we'll address at some other time. An administrator has to allow you to use your cell phone instead of a teacher, but I think it should be a teacher, as you've said.
Mm-hmm.
Just a point of clarification, is this going to be a policy that the board is going to need to approve in the future? I thought this was in procedures.
Yeah, this is not a policy that we have to approve. It's just, I'm thankful that the Student Senate was able to highlight their work, and Mackenzie and Amethyst could highlight their continued leadership. I especially like that legacy video that you guys are considering.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mackenzie, the quick comment that I have, I love it. It's great work. All the students that were involved in doing it. I think the one thing that I think it's just the old teacher in me is that when I see cell phone pockets should be used in class to take attendance, I'm thinking I'm going to have my friend take my phone and they're going to count me as present when there's a sub or whatever. So just throwing that out there. Not sure how I feel about that as a policy. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I can mention it tomorrow too.
Well, thank you, Mackenzie and Amethyst.
Yes. And Jason, we do have to approve the board policy. We don't have to approve this student policy, yeah.
But now we get to move on to policy. So we have that. Policy, we start with policy 6210, purchasing authorization and control. Meg, would you like to do a blurb about this? No.
Meg, you're on mute again.
I was trying to get her off
Okay.
mute.
Okay. All right. So this one is from the group that when the WASDA consultant reviewed these policies, this is one we skipped over waiting for staff review, which we have now had. And there was a district threshold, but let's see, is this one of the ones where we had to 6210 where we wanted to modify it? Yeah. Oh, my computer is misbehaving. But this is, we're making a modification to WAS's model policy on this one. To exempt capital project expenditures from this approval process. And we discussed in study session that we all seem to agree with that. So I would recommend approval of this policy, or move to approve this policy as modified, as it was presented with a modification from WASA.
I second.
Meg has moved and Jennifer has seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right, then with a roll call vote, Meg?
Aye.
There we go. Jennifer?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Policy 6210 is approved. Board, I have to apologize. I went right over item D in turning things around. I am sorry. So if we can stop our policy discussion and go to item D, it is the new CTE language in the EEA CBA. At this point, I am going to recuse myself from this vote and conversation because my sister is a CTE teacher.
So we've had some great conversations around this, and we certainly value CTE, and so we're putting this to you for a vote as a recommendation. And EEA has already looked at this language and voted on it and approved it. So now this is like the final approval.
We have seen this before, correct? Or
yeah, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we showed it to you a while back, and we just needed to still smooth out some language. There weren't really that many changes, but yes.
So I move we approve this language.
I will second.
Jennifer has moved and Meg has seconded. Is there any further discussion? With a roll call vote, Meg?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
I know, that's where is it now? And I am abstaining from this vote because my sister is a teacher. All right, that is accepted. Now we get to go back to policy discussion. Sorry for the interruption. Policy, now I've got this turned around.
6215, I'm ready now.
Thank you, 6215.
Oh, well, no, I'm not ready yet. But 6215 is voucher certification. Okay, this is another one, voucher certification and approval, which we did in the consent agenda earlier. Today and always, often. We wanted to make a modification to this policy as well from the WASDA recommendation, WASDA model, because it wanted advance payment for goods and services not permitted unless previously above a certain amount, not permitted unless previously authorized by the board. With 3 elementary school construction projects in process, we don't want this kind of red tape to interfere with making payments, and so we recommend recommend adopting this policy with that modification from WASDA's model.
With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I will move that we adopt policy 6215 with the modifications Meg specified.
I second.
Jason has moved and Jennifer has seconded. Is there any further discussion? Then with a roll call vote, Meg?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Policy 6215 is adopted. Policy 6920, construction design.
Another one that we want to modify, then the final one, I think, the one that we want to modify from WAS's model, and we have had this modification in our own policy in the past, that there's that construction management services are not required for projects below a certain size. So again, the recommendation of the policy group is that we, and the board in its study session, is that we approve this policy as presented tonight.
So I move that we approve policy 6920.
I'll second it.
Jennifer has moved and Jason has seconded. Is there any further discussion? Then with the roll call vote, Meg?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Policy 6920 is adopted. Policy 6970, naming schools and facilities.
This policy contains district-only language. Okay, this policy contains district-only language that the name of saying that the name of the school will not transfer if that school is replaced. That's not required by WASDA, and we don't want it in there because we want to have the name of Mount Stewart transfer, and who knows what else at another time. So we recommend policy be approved in the WASDA version without our language about not reusing names.
Board members and Meg, if I may, I did hear from John Heinley of OSBI tonight. I got an email from John while we were on our board meeting, and he did confirm that must have been local language. There is no requirement by OSBI that we change the name once we replace a school. So you're right on, Meg.
Thanks, Brian.
And one thing, you had raised a question about politics. It occurs to me that, for example, one could not have a Martin school with the current naming conventions. I don't really care strongly how we do it, but we might want to change that politics to something that encompasses broader community leadership.
Well, there are a bunch of other items in that list. And again, in this case, I go for staying with WAS's wording if we don't have a strong reason.
I agree with Meg on that. I don't see a reason to change it unless we have
I'm fine with that.
Good reason. So,
Dan, I think you're trying to say something.
Yeah, it was just, I'm assuming the 2 question marks will disappear if we decide to leave politics in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fellow detail person.
Somewhat. I liked your idea, though, of putting government in or some other term, but I don't know why that, I don't know. That would make us have to take it to a lawyer or something to look at.
Well, I wonder, even if it didn't require legal review, is there a pro that outweighs the cons of making that right now? What do we gain by changing that language right now? Is there a use case on that?
Since I don't hear from Dan, I'm just gonna say I just think we have to be really wise if we're going to ask the lawyer to look at anything. We really, just with the budget that we have right now, I prefer not to have lawyer fees unless it is unavoidable.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. And I don't see, I mean, if there was some obvious public leader we might want to name a school after, that would be one thing, but I don't see that on our list, so I'm fine with it.
And politics, you know, anybody we'd want to name it after who was in politics is probably a statesman, which is in there too.
I'll entertain a motion on 6970.
I move we approve 6970.
Okay, I'll second.
I think that was Dan. Jennifer has moved and Dan has seconded. Is there any further discussion? Then with the roll call vote, Meg?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Policy 6970 is adopted. Policy 6973, legacy and memorial commemoration.
This is a district-only policy that we that exists for historical reasons I'm not fully acquainted with, but it hasn't been changed, so we don't even really have to adopt it. But since it's on the agenda, it seemed comfortable to adopt it.
It is an action item.
Just a point of clarification, it's
I
actually,
move that
this
we
is not
approve policy
adopting, but to reaffirm.
Okay.
Reaffirm, that's correct, yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Okay. I move we reaffirm policy 6973.
I second.
Jennifer has moved and Meg has seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right, with a roll call vote, Meg?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Policy 6973 passes. We are on the fees and fines report. And this one is not to be adopted. This is for our information only board.
All right, board members, we plan to bring this back to you for approval of all the fees as updated in the next board meeting, and we'll add building rental fees that are being worked on too as we speak. And so this is just for your advance information, so you can see what we are proposing. And then it's in keeping with our practice of bringing you the list of fees and fines each year, so that you can see the updated list. And only you as board members can set fees or fines. We can't set them. I can't set them. School personnel can't set them. Only you can. And so that's why we just think it's good policy to bring it before you each year. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer questions for you.
Well, I had some questions, but I'm going to hold them for when we actually, they were small questions.
Okay, I had a question that I wrote to you earlier about, Brian, just the issue of the battery. I know batteries kind of die after 2 years or 3 years or something, kind of a natural death. I don't know if it's having that on there, I guess, because it's not something that most kids are going to go out and break the battery, you know.
Right, Dan. That's a great question, and I'm going to try and connect with our director of technology and just get clarification on that for you. I've not been able to do that yet, but I will before our next meeting. And I understand that, you know, batteries wear out over time, and it seems punitive to punish people for having to replace a battery that dies in its, you know, after its useful life. I have a feeling that it's more for battery damage that's occurred, and I don't even know if there is such a thing, but I will get clarification from Mr. Welch and before our next meeting for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question, and Brian, if you can't answer it, it's okay. I didn't give information beforehand. I know when I was looking at this, first of all, I just want to say this is great. This is true transparency, and I appreciate this so much as a board member. The question that I have is, it'll be on the topic of band. We've got a lot of people here that might be interested in what we have to say about band. I'm noticing the instrumental rental, as well as I also noticed that for orchestra and choir. So the arts, what I'm confused about is, so we require fees for those things, but for instance, I don't see anything for athletics. So I was wondering if you could speak to, so like if a student's doing football and all the football gear that they would need, is that, like, do the individual students buy all of that gear, or just wondering, trying to kind of figure that out. And again, if that's something you can't answer right now, don't worry about it. I'll save it for later. I'm intrigued. I really am. I think you all know equity is really important to the board, and it's definitely a really important one for me. And I think this board is a real strong advocates for our arts, and I just would like to know.
Thank you for the question, and I will do some research so that I can give you a accurate answer the next time we get together with the rest of the fees. But that's a great question.
Well, am I on mute or not?
No, you're not mute, Meg.
I'm not muted. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, as long as people are asking their questions, I'll ask mine, which are fairly small. One of them is, who pays these bus fees? Perhaps it's related to athletics. What are the bus fees for? That's the question.
Meg, I can answer that one for you, Meg. So when we have field trips, when we have athletic trips, we are only required, or we are only allowed by law to have to and from school costs in our transportation program. And so anything that's outside just delivering kids to and from school, we have to actually charge to the using programs. And so, for example, if an elementary school took a field trip somewhere, we need to be able to charge those expenses for the school bus to their budget, and actually remove those expenses from the Program 99 transportation expenditure, and that's required by law. So they require that each year that we review the costs, and it's basically, it's what is the cost of the driver, how's that changed, what's the cost of the fuel, and we determine a bus charge and a driver charge. And quite honestly, our fuel costs have gone down so much this year, we just left the recommended charges the same.
Well, so that's that and uniforms that Jason brought up are potential costs that could be charged to athletes or their families.
Yes.
Potentially, because I would like to also clarify that or I would like clarification on this, when a parent is paying the $60 rental fee for the instrument, is the football parent paying the gas to get to the game? Are those things the same? So I think that will be further clarified when this is brought to us with the description.
The answer to that, Tasha, is no. And the reason it's no is the extracurricular budget is being charged for the mileage and the trips to and from sports activities. So when we travel out of town to go play different areas, those costs are built into the extracurricular budget. So those charges are not passed along to the parents.
Thank you.
Yep.
Finally found it. The other one I had a question about is, it lists a family pass, an individual pass, and a golden age pass under nothing in particular, and I'm wondering what those are about. They're under high school, it is.
Ooh, good question. I will have to research that one, Meg. I can't answer that one on.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Tasha, if it's okay, the last comment I just wanted to make on that is, again, Brian, thank you for presenting this to the board. I think it is real, the transparency. I know I'm a broken record, but I really think that's important. And I think the thing that maybe I didn't stress enough is, when I'm talking about equity, like, I also think of the type of students that typically are in a lot of these programs. And so I think historically, band and orchestra if we look at the diversity of the students that enroll into those programs, like a lot of times privilege and financial privilege specifically can influence that. So I think we really, as a board, we really need to consider this in the future. I know we have lots of budget complications for the future, and but I just hope that we as a board don't lose sight of equity, and that especially as far as making sure that our students have access to these areas. But a lot of times if they are having to pay additional fees to have access to be involved in some of the arts, I have a real issue with that, especially when that comes to if there's sports where everything, there's no fees associated with that involvement. So thank you.
Jason, thank you for the clarification, and thank you, Brian, for bringing this. I think it is a robust discussion, and it does go to our budget discussion and our board ends as to what it is we want our students to be able to experience in our district. And it is a valid question to bring up, Jason, and it's one to continue discussion on. Thank you, Brian, for bringing that. And thank you for your bond and construction update that you're about to do. See?
Boards, and thank you for your discussion on the policy too. I appreciate your discussion on those finance policies. As far as construction update, we are pleased to be seeing construction moving forward on Mount Stewart. The contractor selected to do a lot of the earthwork and the foundation work. They're just awesome. I think they did 2 weeks worth of work that we were planning in 3 days, and we're done with the foundation plan or the dirt work that they had to do, and we're looking for something else to do. And so we have received a foundation permit for Mount Stewart. We also received the permit under a separate permit with agreement with the city to do Cora Street work. And so you'll notice that intersection at 15th and Cora is blocked off for work that was underway there, and mainly improvements to the sewer system. We are putting in conduit for a future lighted signal there, so that would be less costly down the road to do, and some things like that. We have still not received yet our foundation permit for the new school, but we hope to get that shortly. Let's see what else I think the only permit we have not received connected with the north property, other than the one I just mentioned, is the Department of Ecology has been reviewing our water permit up there. You recall we've already received permission from the Army Corps of Engineers and received our JARPA permit. So this is just the last step on that, and we completed the last day of comment periods today. So our hope is that we will also get that shortly, and that's a big deal for us, because it can be really difficult to get wetland permits and get through that process, and we could be done here in the next week or two. So that's pretty exciting for all of us. That's really all I have, unless you have any further questions. Our team is meeting tomorrow. We have an issue that we're working out with the city on a stop work condition that was given to the contractor. In that case, they were working on dewatering efforts in our time waiting for receiving the permit, and that's something that we're working out with the city. And I wish I could tell you more on that until we're able to meet tomorrow as a team, but that's where we are with construction. So anybody have any questions or concerns or comments?
Brian, and again, I don't know if you can answer this because you may not have the data in front of you, but how long are we talking about for this permit that, like, since you all have requested it, like how long has it been for the, I guess you said there were two specific things that we were waiting on permits for. So I think the foundation for the new school, like just, I just love to hear like a time frame. So if you all have requested the permit, how long ago did you request that? I mean, like, is this just like, oh, it's been a week, or has it been longer? Any ideas on that?
Oh, we've had so many applications go in. I can't tell you off the top of my head.
No worries.
Let me research that, and I'll report
No
that
worries.
to you next time.
Thank you.
Brian, I would like to know, and I'm going to ask this at every board meeting now, where are we on our original timeline for having the schools built? Are we meeting our timeline?
Well, we are discussing that tomorrow morning. You know, we're getting the whole team together out at the site tomorrow, and we've had some delays. I mean, we've run into some complexities and some things that we didn't anticipate, and these are complex projects, and they've taken longer than we expected them to take, and that is going to be an impact on our schedule. We still are hopeful that at least one of our schools will get done, but you know, as I mentioned, our subcontractor on the first phase of work, you know, did in 3 days what we were allocating 2 weeks for, and so you know, I think we're still optimistic that we can make up time and make that work. So I'm not saying right now we're not going to meet our commitments to get those schools open, but we're certainly more challenged now, given that we're roughly about 2 months behind what we thought our schedule would be.
Okay, and you probably, I should have submitted this before, and I apologize, I did not. When we were looking at our budget, has anything changed in our budget for these projects?
Since our last executive design committee meeting, we discussed some of the bid items that came in above budget, and we were able to value engineer out some things. Probably the two of the more painful items were losing one of the kindergarten classrooms, and then losing some square footage out of the library. Those were the two biggest items to help us get back on budget. And then a host of other smaller items and things but there are also a list of things that we are hopeful that we can add back as it begins to be clear that we will not need our contingency money. And so those are all things that we are going to get together as a team tomorrow and talk that through. But you know, the sky's not falling right now, that's for sure. We're you know, construction's moving, and we're working together with the city on Cora Street, and I think things are going to start happening fairly fast now. I have a lot of confidence in our design team, a lot of confidence in Garco. They're an amazing contractor, incredible to work with, and they're nothing but encouraging that we're going to get this done, and they're committed. They're committed to delivering us amazing schools by September, and they're not going to give up, you know, meeting that timeline just now. I will let you know if it becomes clear that we are not going to make it in time, and then we will begin discussing, you know, Plan B. For example, Plan B might be, well, we finish Mount Stewart first, and that becomes we move our Mount Stewart staff and kids into the new school, and then we move Lincoln staff and kids into the Mount Stewart school. But we will find a way to keep Lincoln completed on schedule. You know, there's no concern there. I hope that answers your question, Tasha. It's
No, yes, thank you for your report, and I do appreciate the complexity of building 3 schools, just in general, let alone during. We should just have like a phrase, like every time we say unprecedented COVID times, like a light goes off around the Zoom rooms. Something should be happening. This is complex, but this does matter to our taxpayers. It is a large expenditure. It was remarkable that our citizens stepped up and agreed to this. And so that's the questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brian, I have just one more question. One of the comments that you said is that you would let us know if we're not going to meet the time, or I think think that's how you said it, right? Like you would just
Yes.
let us know.
I would let you know if it became apparent that we weren't going to be able to meet the timelines for opening both new schools prior to the start of school in September of 21. And we aren't there right now. We're still hopeful. I mean, our time schedule was certainly compressed by a couple of months, but as I said, our contractor hasn't given up on the hope that we can make that happen.
Okay. Sorry, it just makes me nervous when it's just like, well, you'll let us know if we're not going to meet it. I think I'll speak for myself. I get nervous being like, no, I'd rather know that it's starting to look like we're not going to meet it, not that it's, well, we're not going to meet it. I just already hearing that we've lost a kindergarten room really concerns me.
Yeah. Really
concerns me. I think the taxpayers in our city would also agree with me on that. That's so anyway, thank you. I know it is a complex issue and I know you're on top of this, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. And yeah, I just think the more transparency and the more we can be aware of what's going forward is helpful. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
I think it helps too that for seating, it helps that the work they've done on Lincoln indicates that we might have extra space in Lincoln to take up for the fact that we have a little bit less space in the other two schools. So we're still coming out with approximately the same as far as new seating is concerned.
That's a great point, Dan. Thanks for making that.
All right, thank you, Brian, for that update. Next is legislative. Does anyone have a legislative update? Everyone's
oh goodness, this I'm gonna say based off of time. It's I think all of us got the I hope all of us got the WASDA, are getting the WASDA updates. There was quite a bit of information on that, and I think that's just an email that the directors are getting. So I'm gonna hope that we're reading our emails and not take up more board time.
Oh, and I appreciate that. Yep. Dan, for early learning.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, just have one thing. Our coalition isn't meeting right now because it's starting summer, but I did start recording some books on a YouTube channel, and I found out that YouTube is not supported by our Chromebooks. With some reasons, but Mike Welsh figured out how to put my YouTube channel on, make it accessible. So apparently now whatever's on there can be accessed, excuse me, with the Chromebooks. So there are a whole bunch of books on there that I read. There's 4 groups. There's K through 3, there's 3 through 6, there's 6 through 9, and there's 9 through 12. Actually, there's also some of the 9 through 12s are also for adults. Like I put the Constitution on there, but I've got, there's more coming. I've got some readings for Mr. Bicchieri. So there's some history coming and some other stuff. And this is kind of in an effort to take over from the Reed Park, which is not going to be happening this summer. So I hope people can go on there if they want to hear a book read or a passage from something historical or fables or various other things, and listen, it's there.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Student reports, Mackenzie. do you have a report?
I have a quick little thing, actually. I was contacted by Yoko Allen. I contacted her at the beginning of quarantine asking about the next steps for our sister school relationship. And now she has contacted me back, and Sanda Shonkon in Japan has just come back into session for school. And before I leave forever, we're hopefully going to have a Zoom call with either Mr. Watanuki, their exchange coordinator, or other students there. And I'm currently sending emails to students I've presented this relationship with and what it entails, and seeing if anyone would like to take the baton when I go. So we're working that out right now.
Hazy, that is incredible perseverance on an incredible project that could very easily have gotten lost in, wait for it, unprecedented COVID times. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no problem. It's fun.
Amethyst, you're on here somewhere. I'm trying to find your share.
Yes, so for the WASDA suicide work group, we are still working on the design of the ID cards. So I'll give you guys an update for the next school board meeting.
Amethyst, thank you for being a part of that incredibly important and difficult work. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Teaching and learning, I would just like to share that last night was the first focus group that Ginger and Jennifer Kuntz led. It was with the Morgan Middle School students first, and then it was with the high school students. And really, it was such an incredible experience to be in there and to be able to hear the voices of the students. They are incredible and heartfelt and really wore on their sleeve that they really want to learn. They really miss their teachers. They really miss the community. They spoke very eloquently and made their case. They also made very clear that they are anxious to know about what next year will look like. And the high schoolers could barely contain themselves of just like, but what's it going to be, right? That is reiterated by almost everyone in our community, and every parent that I run into is, well, what's it going to be? And I know Ginger's going to go over this. The truth is that we don't know what it's going to be. And so everybody is waiting. And I was thankful to be a part of the beginning of the process that Ginger has set up, where the kids had their say. The kids got to talk about what they wanted for their school and what was working for them and wasn't working for them. And Jennifer led that so well and gave everyone a chance to put that information in and for it to be shared. And I don't want to step on the superintendent's report. I know that we have continued voices coming in so that when we do get to decide or figure out what's going to happen, our community is going to be able to decide what happens to our kids in our school system. And I'm very thankful for that. And the kids did an extraordinary job of being that first step yesterday. And then Brian, we're back to you for the financial update.
Okay, board. You know, I think it's been mentioned many times tonight that with COVID-19, these are unprecedented times for us, and I know I get the question a lot. You know, how is this impacting us? Are we spending more? Are we spending less? Are we saving money because you know, kids weren't in school? And what's interesting is it's really hard to answer that question, because yes, in some cases we are spending less. For example, we are spending less on busing costs, and yet we're spending more in other areas. But the unknown right now is really the impact to the revenue side of our you know, the finance equation, and we won't know the impact of that for a while. I look back at this very same time last year, we had expended 87.77% of our budget. This year we've expended 87.67%. So we're a tenth different this year than we were last year, and so we're not seeing a whole lot of effect on the expenditure side yet. So I thought I would mention that because I get that, I'm asked that a lot. I think I'm more concerned about the effect on next year, just because as unemployment rates have grown and tax dollars are diminishing, that's going to have an effect on the state of Washington, and it will dramatically impact funding for the state and funding for schools, which is a significant part of the state's budget. So we can expect significant adjustments for the next budget year. The one thing I wanted to mention to you about the bonds, and that is that we've been approved by our voters to issue $59.5 million in bonds, and you know that we've issued $50 million in bonds, and so we are going through the process of getting ready to issue the final $9.5 million of bonding authority, and our target frame is to try and do that during the month of September. And I know that's a busy time for us, but our bond counsel and our financial consultants tell us that is going to be the best time for us. And so we are beginning that process, with everything else that's going on. So you'll begin to see a little bit more information on that soon. But other than that, we're readying budget. We're ready to reset. As soon as we can meet in person, I would welcome that, as opposed to doing that over video, so that we can have a robust budget discussion. So we're going to be ready, anytime after tomorrow to reschedule that. Like I said, as long as we can meet in person, that would be appreciated. And that's all I have. Any questions at all about finances?
I thought that meeting was already scheduled for the 23rd. No, it's not. I forget what the date is, but
We have a proposed date, Meg, but we haven't solidified it.
okay. Okay.
That's coming up in board calendar.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions about the financial update? Thank you, Brian, for that update.
Thank you.
The superintendent's report.
Hey, I'm going to share my screen here for a second. So looking to next year, and I went back into the May superintendent update and kind of changed dates since we've had some changes with OSPI. The big question, of course, is what is next year going to look like? And I heard that there is a possibility that we could get the official document from OSPI tomorrow as opposed to Friday, which would be good. And so, what are the possibilities? Well, we don't have the official possibilities yet from OSPI, but if you go on their website, you can actually read all of the notes, which I did this weekend, and all the PowerPoints that they've looked at. We have a statewide committee right now that's looking at how do we put together the best models for school districts to consider for next year. And when I go back and I look at all those notes and I sit in on the superintendent Zooms, I believe, for the best of my knowledge, to what's been in the notes and that I've been told in meetings, that these are possibilities. And that is more and more, I think, and this will depend, I think, on the phase that a county is in. And of course, here in Kittitas County, we're in phase 2. I speak with Dr. Larson every Wednesday, and I actually spoke to him twice. I spoke to him today and yesterday. And as long as we don't get a huge increase in cases here, I think, and if it comes out from OSPI as this officially being a choice, there could be a possibility of sending all students back to school. We could start the school district or start the school year with distance learning and then gradually bring in smaller groups of students. We could start the year that word hybrid is being thrown around. What that basically means is that there'll be could be some kind of a combination between having some distance learning as well as bringing some groups of students in. And then the other is they're calling it continuous learning 2.0. And that would be just everybody stays at home and does distance learning. What I do think will be true is I do think we're going to have parents that, because we don't have a vaccine yet for COVID or other reasons, may decide that they really want to keep their child home for all of next year until there is a vaccine. And so we're already thinking that we will need to have some kind of a strand, a learning strand or pathway for those students and parents who decide that that's the best option for their child. So we're looking at some different platforms. We are anticipating getting some one-time money from the CARES Act that filters through OSPI. And we could possibly use some of that one-time money at least to get us through next year for that distance learning. And we have a committee that's working on that currently, and Kelly and Jen are working together with that committee to really explore what are some of the options out there, what could we afford using that one-time money. Not all the money, right? Because we're going to still need to use that one-time money for masks. We're going to need to use it for plexiglass if we end up going to face shields, for example. So there'll be other costs that we need to use that one-time money for. But certainly those are some important considerations, and we could use some of that to help us with a strand of distance learning. If I scroll down, I just went in and changed some to the correct dates now that we have a better idea of what OSPI is going to do. So if we in fact can and hopefully get the OSPI models and their recommendations tomorrow, then we already have a meeting on the calendar for the first thing on Friday morning for administrators, principals to come together to start looking at it. The models that actually come out from OSPI. I will say though, during the, all the way through June basically, but we have been brainstorming. Not only we've met a couple of times as with principals and directors to start wrapping our brains around what could we do if we decided to bring all students back? What would it look like if we had to do some kind of a hybrid model? And principals have been great about already talking to their staff about it, and they've been getting a lot of feedback from their faculty. And so if we get the models from OSPI tomorrow, then we'll be able to come together on Friday to say, okay, what could work across the board for high school, middle school, and elementaries, not only with what an instructional model could look like, but considering that we'd have to think about transportation, whatever that model is across the board, what's the level of flexibility that OSPI would allow us, maybe between buildings. We don't know that yet, but I'm hoping that that guidance will be in there. And then we do have, when you look at these models, we definitely have some limiting factors, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But that's part of the process. And as you mentioned, Tasha, we had our first focus groups the last night with students. I think what really stood out to me from the student feedback is that they crave feedback. They really appreciate feedback from teachers and specific feedback as opposed to not just a grade or a mark, but they really want to know, where am I at? What can I do to improve? So I was really encouraged by that, and they really appreciate teachers that are, all those efforts that our teachers are doing right now to reach out and connect with that feedback. So assuming that we're able to get the guidelines from OSPI tomorrow, that we're able to meet on Friday and then Monday again, then we'll have some options that will actually be viable that we will share with our focus groups on Monday and Tuesday. So Monday evening, we've got our elementary staff members, and then we've got our secondary staff members. And then we also have a third group that night, which is our Spanish-speaking parents. And then on Tuesday, we have our elementary parents, and then we'll have our secondary parent focus groups. And we will be probably following a similar protocol that we did with the parent or the student focus groups. and giving them an opportunity on a Google Sheet for parents to put in their comments and have some discussion around that. We have an hour for each focus group, but I want to say we have it's great. And I'm so glad that because we really need feedback from all of our stakeholders. I want to say we have about 60 parents just for the secondary group, and then maybe about 40 parents right now at elementary. So we have a really good group of parents and staff members who will be able to give us some real valuable feedback that we will capture in Google Docs. And then we're hoping if we can stay on that track that on the 17th, we already have time set aside for us to have a mixed group, and I'll be reaching out to parents and students and staff to see who would be interested in doing that. We have to keep that to a little bit smaller number because we want to possibly with masks have an in-person meeting if we can at Morgan Middle School Library with the social distancing and masks, which means we'll have to keep the number smaller. So if we're not in phase 2 or going into phase 3, then I'll get Dr. Larson's recommendations. We may have to do it by Zoom. But anyway, and the numbers that are in there are not, we're gonna make this committee actually bigger with more parents and more staff members than are listed right here. And then we'll get all of that feedback Monday and Tuesday of next week. We'll bring a mixture of stakeholders together on Wednesday to look at all of the feedback, to synthesize it, and then come up with their charge on that Wednesday will be to come up with what they would recommend as a model, share it with me, and then I'll take it to you guys as a board on the 24th. And then that's when you guys would officially look at it. And if you're ready to vote on it, if you need more information or whatever, we can extend it. But I think people are pretty excited to want to find out what is the model for next year. And I think we've got a pretty robust process put in place to get a lot of voices around what's important to them for next year. Some of our limiting factors, I know I've gotten some emails where people, which I really appreciate, you know, who has to wear masks? How often, you know, will kids have to wear masks all day? What about kindergarten and first graders? They're not going to wear that, you know, is that really realistic to think that young children aren't going to be able to wear a mask all day? What do we need to do for teachers as far as safety is concerned, as well as students with masking? And in talking with Dr. Larson, it's the science and decisions around that have kind of evolved over time. And so he's also very interested to hear what OSPI is going to recommend. So hopefully there'll be some more specific types of recommendations there. Because as you guys probably know, Dr. Larson he's required to be as strict as OSPI and the governor, but he can choose to be stricter based on what the needs are here in this county. I will say he's amazing. He really wants to make it work for us, and he would love to be a guest speaker for us at our next board meeting on the 24th. He said he would be glad to come and kind of give his perspective on what the guidelines are from OSPI and what his recommendations would be, you know, around masking and some of those, you know, do we still need to take temperatures? And then I think some areas that we definitely need to look at, and I'm hoping that we'll get more guidance from OSPI on, include band, choir, PE, and sports, right? So right now, and I've been talking to Dr. Larson all the way through, and he and I even talked today, you know, the thought of putting 20 students, you know, a large group of students together with instruments playing all together like we normally do right now for band is not something that right now appears to him to be very safe. I know I had a meeting with Robbie today, and he shared that he has a study that he wants to share with me that I'll pass on to Dr. Larson that was done around, the amount of water droplets that go in the air when people play instruments. Dr. Larson will look at that, but I really have asked him to give us some official recommendations around that. Sports is another area that we are still waiting to hear about. Are we going to have football? Are we not? All of those contact sports like football, soccer, basketball, we really have to think through those decisions because of COVID. And certainly in phase 2, you can bring, a group of 5 together, but to go beyond that right now is not something that is allowed in phase 2. What's interesting, even if you look at the governor's new guidelines that came out, it's for professional football teams or professional teams and recreational teams. And we got something from the ESD 105 nurse that said, we still haven't seen the specific recommendation around all this for schools. So hopefully with those PI and their recommendations, that will start to help us answer some of those questions. Because certainly when we're looking towards next year, those are the kinds of things that we've been thinking about, even when we're looking at like attrition types of decisions. We have to consider next year and what is going to be doable. It's going to look very different. The idea that everyone's going to go back and it's going to be the same. From everything I've read, from all my conversations with Dr. Larson, COVID is still going to be around from everything that we know. I've seen graphs that show that the trajectory of COVID, kind of like being a little roller coaster, up and down kinds of cycles through the fall and into the spring if we don't have a vaccine by then. So I think it is important as a board and as a district to really follow Dr. Larson's guidance and just to be aware of the science and the graphs and the work that's being done by our epidemiologists so that we can create learning environments that are as safe as they can be, considering that COVID most likely is going to be around at least, this is my own prediction, would be at least through first semester, if not for the entire year.
And Ginger, can I just kind of point out or slightly clarify something you said? It's not just important for us as a district to follow Dr. Larson's advice. We have no choice. Even if we as a district disagreed with him, and we don't, we are required to meet the rules that he and OSPI and the state put out. So as we talk about what the year looks like, we might have our ideas of what we would like the year to look like, but we are going to be bound to whatever guidance is being put out by the public health system.
And that would change over time as, we've seen already the states and cities that have opened up all of a sudden have a spike in COVID. And the projections are that when everybody goes back to school, that's going to happen. If everybody goes to school physically, that is going to happen here too, probably, but who knows? So we'd need to have some sort of protocol for what happens when we all of a sudden get kids coming to school sick, or a teacher coming to school sick, or something like that. There has to be something in our system set up to deal with that.
And I would say I'd be very excited to have Dr. Larson come to our meeting, because he can really put the constraints that we will be working under into context, because we really can't talk about a lot of things like music and sports if we don't understand what we can make it look like. And then we have to figure out how we best meet the needs of our students within that framework. But whatever we talk about has to be within the framework for this year, hoping that by next year we can be back to normal, but recognizing that this year is not going to be normal.
Ginger, was that your, at the end of your report? Okay. Next on our agenda is public comment, and in case you are just joining us now, at the beginning, I had said this, and there's also, if you scroll way to the top of the chat box, that is the board's email. Since the board is meeting virtually, we are taking comments through the email. The email that's in there goes to all board members, and they all see it at the same time. We appreciate your understanding of this. We are hopeful that we are not going to be virtual for forever. I think, especially after tonight's marathon Zoom meeting, we would really like to be in person. And it would be great to have public comment the way we traditionally do. So please, if you would like to submit a public comment, please submit that to the email that is at the top of the chat box. Proposed items for future consideration.
So Tasha, I wanted to just bring back up what I brought up in the study session about, so we had a study session on May 27th. I'm just referencing the minutes. So this was when we had a discussion on board budget priorities, which again, I think is a very hot topic right now, based off of a lot of things. And so I think it's really important that we address this in a timely manner. I understand, I think with what you shared earlier at the study session is that this got postponed or put off because we're still virtual and we can't meet in person. So while I hear that, the world around us has gone virtual, and so I think we have to too. It has been a while since we've I think we've just adapted to being virtual, but I think we really just, we have to just move forward. Just like our teachers had to adjust, we have to adjust. And I know in my job, I've had to adjust as well. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox because I don't want to make this meeting any longer. But my point is in that meeting, we discussed board budget priorities, and we discussed diagrams. I think in the notes it says it was determined to hold a special board meeting to discuss budget, specifically board budget priorities. So this is where the board has the opportunity to really provide that vision to the admin about where our budget needs to be next year. And I recommended, and it's in the minutes, I recommended that the board do some walk-in or do some work investigating the subjects to have a better conversation around the topic. So I really want to see this happen. If it can't be in person, then I think we need to move forward. My suggestion is we do it virtually. I also wanted to point out, I think the public comment after the amount of time that we've been doing this virtually, I think emails are not like the best way. I think we have these board meetings, they may go long, but if people have sat through them, I think they deserve the right to be able to give their public comment. And so if we aren't going to move quickly to switching to being in person, then I think we really need to reconsider that to figure out how we can get people that attend these meetings for this length of time, they should be able to, I think, give their public comment.
So Jason, my understanding from the last WASDA update that came out is that the 17th is actually the day that after that we can start meeting in public again. And so right now we're planning on, unless something else, happens different, then we, be doing it like we are now. But my understanding is that on the 24th, we're already kind of planning to have that in person because that restriction will be lifted.
So I have a concern about that though, because my understanding, Ginger, is there is a restriction on how many people can be in a set meeting. And so based off of some of the topics that have come up, and just based off of, I received over 20 emails about band. So like if we have a large community that's wanting to show up, then we would have to restrict how many people could actually attend the meeting. We can't, if we're doing it virtual, we can have as many people that need to be here. And while I want to be respectful of the board's time, we have a due diligence to support our community and our teachers, and we need to be able to allow them to provide public comment.
I believe June 24th can be a hybrid, right? I believe that guidance came out and they said that we can be in person so people can do there. We can find a spot that's large, like probably not the little theater. I don't believe that'll be large enough. Find that spot and still have this virtual, right? That option, because the last thing we would want to do is have an in-person board meeting and then turn people away.
Yeah, right.
Right. So I believe that can happen. I also believe that guidance came out as to why we are taking emails virtually was within that guidance. So you are right. This has gone on for a long time. Other municipalities or meeting boards have been able to do other things, like able to see the city council had different procedures. So I think that we can revisit that and find that out. And I agree with you, this board budget meeting needs to happen. It's not slated for the 24th. That's our standing meeting. That's not the special meeting of the budget. The budget is coming before the 24th for that standing meeting. And that, once again, was moved because felt very strongly that should not be a virtual, that should be in person so people can do that. If we have to do a hybrid, that's one thing, but allowing people to come in and speak and to say what needs to be done in that budget is really, really important.
And I agree with that as well. I mean, I'm all about let's have people in. I just remember, and we'll have to contact WASDA, there were rules that were coming down that were restricting us from certain things. But I agree with you, Jason, and I'll look into that and find out, where do we have some wiggle room there to be able to do what we need to do for our community.
Yeah, and I would point out that the June 17th date may be extended. I don't know that it will be, but it may be, so that we wouldn't be free to meet on the 18th and beyond. And also, I can't remember exactly what it is, but there is some restriction on our ability to limit, not we want to, but we will be required to allow oral comments on certain topics at some time. I forget exactly what it is, but so I'm with Jason. We need to get used to a virtual world if we and I think I agree. I don't think I agree. I agree that board members need to do some homework before this meeting, and we need to have it as soon as we can.
And board members, if you check your email, I did send out a resource for support on that budget discussion. Well, Meg sent a document, so thank you, Meg, for doing that work. So yes, we've been provided with resources
This is for me to tell people to do homework.
Go ahead, Dan.
I'm wondering if maybe the Performing Arts Center would be open for a time that we could get together.
Yes.
I think that's probably the only place that's really big enough to spread out in that we have.
Yes, I think that Matt is helping us find a location for that and seeking clarification on the Open Public Meetings Act. WASDA sends out those updates as to what we can and cannot do. Mm-hmm. And as this has continued, it seems like for forever, the board has got to find a different way to meet the legal obligations of the Open Public Meetings Act and to allow access to the community. And so what was sent out with legal ramifications before was that what we could do is meet via Zoom, and we had the ability to not have a computer in a place. Like that was what was going to have to happen before too. We were going to have an open room with a computer with Zoom running by itself. The governor was able to free us of that restriction, and also how public comment worked. But if this is our new normal, right, if this is what we're doing for any extended amount of time, this is not serving the community well, and we are looking for revision. That is why the June 11th meeting was revised. Now, the June 11th meeting cannot go past June 24th, but June 24th is our standing meeting. The special meeting was going to be fit in between that meeting. It's not the June 24th meeting, unless I have my calendar wrong now, because I have too many screens.
Can I provide a point of clarification?
Yes, please.
The current OPMA Public Meetings Act that came out from the governor's proclamation, those end on the 17th. So how we do these meetings and how they are set up is subject to change after the 17th. So regardless of what the setup is, of whether it's Zoom or whether it's in person, those all adjust after the 17th, whether or not we are in phase 3. How we take public comment and how all those pieces are seen will change after the 17th. So there's 2 dates that I think are being confused. One is the potential of going into phase 3, which is also slated for June 17th. That has nothing to do with OPM regulations, that it ends on June 17th.
Thank you for that clarification, Matt. I think that the point is well taken, that the board wants to hear from the public. The point is well taken, that we want to have a robust budget discussion. We've been provided material in order to have that discussion. We want to include the public in it, and we want the public to attend and to be heard, because that budget discussion is important. When we start getting into, everyone's waiting on OSPI we need the guidance from OSPI. We need to hear from Dr. Larson on the 24th and to see what we can even begin planning for the fall, so that we are within those guidelines. One thing that we can be thankful for with our unusual late start date that we have for school compared to other schools is that the state of Texas is starting in the middle of July, and the East Coast is starting in the middle of July. So we are going to see schools going back to school earlier than us, and we are going to see schools like the state of Texas with Friday Night Lights who are going to solve football before we have to. So we are going to be able to have some of that to go forward and help us, if that's at all a silver lining in any of this.
I wanted to say one thing too about all those of you who are in attendance tonight because of the band thing. That was not slated to be on the agenda to talk about tonight. So by state law, the Open Meetings Act, we can't discuss it tonight.
And I appreciate that clarification, Dan, but
it needs to be discussed.
By state law, Dan, we can't also speak directly to the audience that way. The Open Public Meetings Act.
Sorry.
The state law of the Open Public Meetings Act is quite amazing when you start going through it, of the restrictions and the stipulations. And I only say that, Dan, because we all promised to help each other with that, because it's incredibly frustrating being a board member and not being able to speak specifically to what you want to speak to. So I give that out and hope that you would do the same for me in return. Does anyone else have any proposed items for future consideration? Well, this ties in nicely to board calendar, because now we can discuss when that special meeting is to discuss budget priorities. It is my understanding that we had something slated for the week of June 16th. I don't have my wrong calendar up. Matt, do we have a clarification point on that? Have we put in a date as a proposed date for that special meeting yet?
The special meeting was set to actually take place this week, but it was canceled because we wanted to be able to have public comment and public interaction. So we removed it, and so it is at the Ginger. We'll defer to Ginger for the setting of the date.
Ginger, you're on mute.
So Monday and Tuesday night, we're already here, you know, late with the focus groups. Wednesday, we could do it. We could do it Wednesday night if you, that's the day that all of that kind of changes.
There's not a focus group on the 17th?
Oh.
No. It's on Monday and Tuesday.
No.
Go ahead, Meg. Meg, you're on mute now.
Okay, the 18th is the day it changes. The 17th is the last day of the current regime.
So is it possible for Thursday the 18th? Since I'm not seeing a lot of people saying no right now, can we agree that Matt can send out an email with a suggested date of June the 18th as a meeting? And we can confirm via email on that date. But in the meantime, if you have your calendar in front of you, you can block off some time.
And I'm assuming we'd want to start like around 4 or so, because I know some folks work, you know, during the day. Would that work for you, Jason? Okay. So why don't we say 4 o'clock on the 18th? And then we'll figure out a place for it and send out the details on that.
Yes. Do we have anything else on the board calendar? All right. Clarification and next steps.
Nope, I'm good.
Do we have an executive session?
Yes, we do.
So board members, we're gonna have our first virtual executive session. So the way that's gonna work is we're all going to stay on the line until we're alone in that room. We will deal with, and so how long will we be in executive session?
Let's start with 15 minutes, and then if we have to add to it, we can. And it's for personnel reasons, staff performance.
Tasha, my understanding is that we have to actually have a separate Zoom session because this is recording, or I don't know if we could just go to a conference call, but we actually have to shut this window down. Otherwise we are recording. I also need I need a couple-minute break before we start the executive session, please.
Okay, so in order to meet the legality of the executive session, we are going to close this Zoom room and we will take a 5-minute break, and then we will go into a 15-minute executive session in a different Zoom room. So Matt, please send out that email so that we can do that. At 15 minutes, do we come back to this Zoom room?
Have to, I think, by law.
Yeah, we would do that in a normal meeting, so.
Yes, you have to. I will send out a Zoom meeting room right now. You will have to log into that one separately. And then you will come back to this Zoom room.
Okay, so I am officially calling a 5-minute break, and then we will move into a 15-minute executive session. And then there's not going to be action taken in that executive session, and we will come back to this Zoom room. All right. Thank you.
What do we do with that?
If I open up another one, I have to shut.
Can you just look over this and try to see if you can answer? Cada vez já esqueci. Esqueci to go over this and answer.
The board is still in executive session and will be for another 15 minutes. The school board is still in executive session for another 10 minutes. I believe we're just waiting for Jennifer. And my school board laptop died. So I believe all we have to do at this point is adjourn the meeting. Do we wait for Jennifer to come back? Ginger, you're muted.
I don't know that we have to have a quorum to adjourn the meeting.
Right?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Jason seconded. All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Yes, for sure. And Dan's here too. So I think we've got quorum to make the decision. So,
Yep, this meeting is adjourned.
Whew, that was the longest meeting I've ever been at with you all. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Yep. Bye.